What's going on, everybody? Welcome to another Whiskey, Web, and Whatnot with myself, Robbie the Wagner, and my co-host, as always, Charles William Carpenter III.
My friends call me Hasselhoff.
All right, Hasselhoff. Our guest today is almost related to you. We have Kate Holterhoff with us today. How's it going, Kate?
It's going well, thanks. I appreciate the invitation. I'm a long-time listener, first-time, participant?
Yeah, there you go.
Yes. Yeah, we're glad to have
Subject, victim.
All of those things. Prepare yourself.
Yeah. For people who are listening who may not have heard of you, can you give us a few sentences about who you are and what you do?
Yeah, sure. So I am an analyst with a company called RedMonk, and we're developer-focused. So we focus a lot on the practitioner. We talk to a lot of developers about what they see. We follow trends in the industry. And we're all generalists, but I tend to follow certifications as well as front-end engineering, that entire space, because before I became an analyst, I was a front-end engineer myself, as well as an academic for 10 years.
Nice. Yeah. Very cool.
You kind of reversed that old saying of like, and not to mean this as a detriment to you by any means or your career, but like, sure. You know, those who can't do, teach.
Oh, yeah.
Have you ever heard that? And you kind of flipped the script on that.
No,
like,
I know.
I can do and teach.
The mockery is just continuous. It was funny when the way that I transitioned from being an academic to front-end engineering was that I took an internship. I was doctor intern because I had, have a PhD in literary and cultural studies, which meant that I taught a lot of communication courses. And but I was also really focused on design and spent some time doing like public art when I was living in Cincinnati. And so I paint a lot of murals. So anyway, so all of that, like that aspect of the internet and the web was always interesting to me. So it felt very natural to, I guess, take my interest in digital humanities as a discipline and kind of transition that to actually creating websites, which I did for a couple of years before I heard the siren call of analyst work and left it all behind. So now I just
nice. Now that you've mentioned Cincinnati, Chuck is going to want to know, do you like Skyline or what's the other one, Chuck?
Gold Star. We had this talk in person, though, at Render.
Oh, did you?
Yes. This is like the impetus of all of that. So, yeah, we went to, we can revisit it later for anyone curious, but we'll probably get some whiskey in us first because it seems like a good idea. Today, we're having the Hirsch Horizon Bourbon. It is 92 proof. It is sourced whiskey from Lawrenceburg, so MGP has a big distillery there, and a lot of small batch producers or micro distilleries will source some of their things and do some finishing and whatever else. So this is a blend of two different ones they came up with. 95% of the blend is a 4-year, 9-month aged that has 75% corn, 21% rye, and 4% malted barley. The second one, which is only a 5%, which there's additional cost to that. So that one is a 6-year, 2-month age with the same exact mash bill. So they're just mostly blending just two different ages of this same one and see how it affects things. So I don't know. We'll see.
Interesting. I've never had this distiller before.
I have a long time ago. So I haven't had like any of their new stuff. It's been a while. So it's like, that'll be an interesting one.
Smells like juicy fruit to me.
Juicy fruit. Hold on, I have to get the sound effects because I'm a burgeoning Foley artist. We'll talk about this from time to time. I'm also looking at career pivots and voice actor is one that I find interesting, and Foley artist. Yeah, I want to be in like
Foley artist.
Oh, they make the sound effects for movies, so a lot of that stuff gets added later in post production, and there's a whole discipline where they do different things to, like, somebody's walking in the snow, they don't capture that on set, they'll add those effects in later, just the challenges with directional mics and all of that. So Foley artist, someone who comes up with the clever sounds you hear in movies.
Learn something new every day.
I too am a scholar of bullshit knowledge. Ooh, okay, I see where this juicy fruit comes from a little bit. Does have that whole, like, whatever flavor that was supposed to be was not fruity at all.
Like, was no real fruit, but like some kind of sweetness.
Yellow gum flavor and sugar. Remember those Fruit Stripes gums that would last like, they would have stripes, they would like crazy intense flavor. And then
they were so good. Zebra gum.
Yeah, except for it only lasted like 4.5 seconds.
Yep.
You know what
I think
that's
that's
like.
pretty
what this tastes
universal with
like.
kids gum.
Yeah. Yep. What was it? Big League Chew. That was another big one around that time.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Encouraging kids to chew tobacco in later lives. You've already started it with this gum
Make
flavor.
a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Yeah. They taste about
Target
the same.
audience. I think it was just that era of the 90s when the Sandlot was so big. Just everything was baseball themed.
Right. I can't get that smell out of my mind now. So I'm going to taste it.
It tastes like a little bit of ginger or, I don't know, like some General Tso's chicken or something.
Okay. I mean, I could see
I don't
like
know.
a
I
pickle,
just make shit
something
up.
like a light vinegary pickle flavor. A little bit of, I get some woodiness. A little bit of like, okay, I don't know if you've ever done this in a cocktail where you like take a flame to the orange peel or whatever peel it is to draw some of the oils out, and then you end up with like a little bit of a flame, a little bit of a citrus flavor in your drink. Anyway, that I'm getting some of that. We make all these things up. Don't, there can be an Analyst article about developers making up flavor profiles. That's us. It's just about us.
Well, I put a little water in mine to try to space it out a little bit. I'm having a hard time.
That's fair. I always say that the water is really great to give you basically two different tastes. You can like have your initial taste right out of the bottle, kind of whatever comes there. You get a few drops of water, put some oxygen in there, and then it opens it up to something completely different. Which is a nice thing. I keep saying I should bring some of that to the office to give myself that opportunity, but alas, here we are. 100 plus.
Hydration.
Yeah. Well, I have that, a big hydration thing, or I'm waiting on my sponsorship from Diet Coke because I drink like 2 or 3 of these a day, and that will give it a very cola flavor. Have that, then drink one. I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's like, what do I want to go? 0 calories destroys all microbiomes. Maybe. There I go. I ruined my sponsorship. So, as part of the whiskey portion, as an avid listener, you probably understand, but for the other listener who may be tuning in now and may have forgotten.
I like how you say singular.
Yeah. So the scale is 0 to 8 tentacles, 0 because we're engineers and index based, and 8 obviously being amazing. So that 0 or 1, whatever you like. This is horrible. Since you continue to drink it, I'm going to assume it's not one of those. But yeah,
not horrible.
4 being, it's fine. It's good. It's all right. I can live with this. 8, this is amazing. I'm clearing the shelves. And everything in between there.
Right.
Yeah.
I give it a 6.
Yeah, you really you were like zoned right into that. Yeah, you like it? You go there again?
Yeah, that's good.
Okay.
I'd go here again.
Yeah, that's fair. I'm really warming up to it personally too. I wasn't sure that smell threw me off, and then the first taste was a little like, I don't know, but as I've taken like a couple of more tastes, I think I'm going to put it around a 5. I think this is very approachable and might make some very interesting cocktails too because of some of those flavors, like some of that sweetness, high corn like that, but not like corny flavor. It has to be aged long enough, and 4 years had me worried, but I think the 6 year kind of got them over the line and gave it some good flavor there. So I'm gonna say 5.
Yeah, I'm gonna say 4. It's not really impressing me a ton, but I don't dislike it, so we'll say middle of the road.
Yeah, that tracks for you. You tend to be like high corn, high, I'm out of here.
Yeah. I mean, it's still better than Scotch, but so are lots of things.
There goes our Travel Scotland sponsorship. You might remember that we like to talk about different hot takes now at a different part of the show. And I was trying to think about like what would be some good hot takes, but applicable to like your relationship with engineering. And, I hope you don't waste as much time as we do following some of like the bullcrap tech Twitter stuff down like milk or non-milk or what do we do? Is milk racist now? I don't know. There's a lot of like crazy directions things go. And so I don't know. We'll see. But mentioning that, I'm curious, like, have you noticed some of those things like tech Twitter folks? What do you just think in general about that being a place for engineers to go and debate spicy technology disagreements?
You mean X, of course.
Yeah, I'm not calling it that. I'm not. It seems like one step away from Pornhub, and I just, I'm not trying to associate. That's a, secret life.
Well, I'd say all of us at RedMonk are really on the fence about, where to go with our social media, I guess, following, like where we're trying to look for news or we're trying to follow trends. But it's interesting. Yeah, I mean, X/Twitter does still seem to be a default. I had a lot of issues with Mastodon, just in terms of like I had to unsubscribe from folks who just kept posting. I know I'm not alone with that frustration. But I'd say in terms of like following trends in the industry, I am doing a lot of LinkedIn lately. I know it's embarrassing, but everybody, if you go to LinkedIn, you know what you're getting yourself into. You don't feel stupid if you're like talking about something that you're excited about in terms of the tech space. People are like, oh, maybe she's talking, well, other folks are maybe selling things. That's where they go to sell things. Like, it makes sense. It's okay to talk about your job, things that you're excited about. And I am on Blue Sky, but I got a little put off by the porn. So back to the porn. It just was a lot of naked people. And I was like, this is not, I don't know if they've tamped that down lately. But I kept getting logged out of it too. That's probably, they were like updating things. And then, so I actually am not even logged onto it on my phone, which means I haven't checked on it lately. But last time I went on my desktop, there wasn't porn, so maybe the porn situation has died down. I don't know, but
so with Mastodon and Blue Sky, all these things are like I don't know. I'm pretty uneducated, but like they do like the decentralized thing or whatever. Where so like if that's the thing, how do they moderate any porn? Like if they have no control,
they probably.
But nobody's interested in posting porn on the Mastodon instances that I follow, so that hasn't seemed to be an issue. I don't know. That's my lived experience. But
only things that Jack Dorsey starts.
Yeah.
It is. It's a very curated community, but it's not interconnected very well, right? How many Mastodon servers do you need to log into? It just started to feel a little too much like Discord. 50 Discord servers too. And the interface is hard to, you're getting a lot of real-time things, but after that, you're just like, I don't know, I just can't keep track.
Yeah.
It's an interesting thing.
It's problematic.
Yeah. I think that people get frustrated with the new because they're trying to leave the old, but the old still works well enough to get them what they need. So, unless there's like en masse. And the thing is that you're getting so much more like public discourse around things too at times. And if it's too much of a small community just echoing the same sentiments, then what's the value, I guess? You can go to LinkedIn for some of that. LinkedIn is nice if you want to feel good, I guess, to a degree, or get sold to a bunch. It's just the problem is that to a degree it starts to feel disingenuous to me. So,
for sure. But I think it depends on what you're going on there for. So I'm not. I was talking to somebody about this who's really good at Twitter. I won't name names, but I would even call him an influencer. He was explaining to me how much he loves riffing. And I was like, I think I'm pretty good at riffing. Like, I go out for beers with folks. I'm keeping ahead of the conversation here. I like to riff, but I think I don't riff so well online. He's like, yeah, you gotta reply to people. I was like, I don't know. I just don't do it. So I think that's the problem is like online riffing is just not my jam.
Yeah.
I don't know. I can riff on a podcast, maybe. I don't know. We'll see here.
Yeah.
So I think it's the whole riff, the discourse of riff.
It's all about timing, I think, is the problem, too. So if you riff soon enough, right, and then you start to get a little back and forth, and you're like, oh, that was a good interaction. And then you try to do it 5 or 6 more times, but you're a little too late, because you're seeing things in just a strange order of events. And then you get in there, and you're like, well, too late. Nobody cared. There was 100 responses already. Which is why I think it has me coming back, because I'm trying to catch the riff early. I want to catch the good wave early on. Otherwise,
Yeah, I always had that problem on Reddit where it was like, anything on the front page that I would be, unless you're there all the time or like go to new or something, it's like everyone's already, these, thousands of comments. You're like, well, I'm not even going to bother. What's the point?
Yeah. Reddit's more of an archive for me. I want to see what people have talked about and what conclusion they came to. So if I go and start searching, Bing, if I Bing search things, because everybody uses Bing now, right? Or something.
Yeah.
No?
Oh, definitely. Yeah. For sure. Yeah.
I will scope it to that site, and then I want to get like what's some real world feedback about what happens. But I find it also hard to have any discourse there because again, if you're not early, and I don't have time for all of these places.
So what are your places then?
I don't even know that I have places, but I think that
You mentioned Discord. Are you
TikTok?
on Discord then?
I'm on Discord for tech communities. So basically,
Right.
once Slack decided they were going to charge everyone, all open source communities moved to Discord because it was free and close enough, but it sucks. In my experience, it is terrible.
It's okay.
I don't like it. I hate it.
I can't put my finger on what I don't like is the problem, because like Discord has on paper kind of the same functionality as Slack, but I just don't feel good using it.
Yeah, the
so it's like
interface works.
it just kills my motivation to like talk to anyone.
Yeah, I just feel like the interface is more confusing, and their search function has just never been good enough. It took them forever to actually get threading too, which made conversations that much more difficult. I don't know. I mean, it was developed with gamers in mind, and then has become adopted from the open source community, but I still just think it's like not quite getting it. So I don't think that it's probably just Twitter, X, or whatever is the most I do right now, and most of the impetus of that is this podcast, because I had rage quit social media, I don't know, 6-7 years ago. Oh yes, I lost my first adopter like Twitter handle and Instagram and like all these things, and I had quit everything across the board. And then I had to like kind of passively activate my Facebook account. And that was in order to use the Oculus, because they forced you for a little while. And so games. And then Twitter's basically, I was back on LinkedIn for a while. I've actually hibernated that even too, because it's just too much. People are trying to sell to me constantly, or I don't know. It just feels I have a problem acting fake. And not to say that other people like it. I don't know, but I just, again, I can kind of, you could say a lot of like edgy things on Twitter, and it's nowhere near as edgy as most of the other people. So it's kind of still okay. And you feel like I can be myself, and there's not a lot of blowback on that. I don't know. So I guess Twitter, that's my half-assed answer. And only because of this podcast though.
Right.
You know, getting in contact with guests, it's a nice place to do that. It seems to be more centralized, and people are responsive there. So
Yeah, that's
things
true.
are just too hard these days. Like Instagram used to be, I'm just going to post pictures, right? And now you have to have like reels and stories and like 50 different ways to post the same pictures and videos instead of just doing a normal post. Like, just give me my posts back. I don't want to do all this work.
No, I liked it when it was more of an artist community, and I was very into photography for a long time. So it was really about like, I mostly didn't follow people I knew. I was following photographers or people who just took photos that I liked, and then sharing kind of the same thing. I wasn't like sharing my life or my day or whatever, but at a certain
Your
point,
meals.
Yeah, my meals. Although food porn is allowable, I think. There's,
absolutely.
something to that, but
People like that.
yeah, give the people what they want. They want to know where I'm eating.
Where you're having brunch.
And what it is. Yeah, brunch. I lived in D.C. for quite some time, so brunch culture was very serious there.
It's news to me.
Bottomless. They used to do bottomless cocktails at certain places, and then if you really wanted to push it, there were places that did like bottomless tapa, like breakfast tapas. And that was
Breakfast
kinda
tapas
fun.
aren't a thing.
You know, all of,
You made that up
mean,
just
like
now, actually.
unlimited eggs.
basically, or things made to also have eggs and whatever else. Or well, it's brunch, so you get like a little of lunch, breakfast, both things, but you can get, they bring you one breakfast taco and one handful of fries, and you can just keep ordering it, and they'll bring it at whatever cadence they feel like. But as long as they keep filling up your bloody or mimosa or whatever else, then you're fine with it.
That's true.
Okay.
Well, should we circle back to some technology at all, or should we just keep down there?
Keep talking
I
about
do
Twitter
think it's-
ad nauseum. Yeah.
I do think it's worth noting as, a native Cincinnati, that there is
You
a
just made
very
that up.
famous. I did. But this isn't the first time I've made it up, though. I made it up many years ago, and so now it's a thing. Geta is the meat, the breakfast, usually breakfast sort of sausage that is native to our homeland. It's funny, every once in a while I'll see people eating it. Like I was up in Maine and someone had like stockpiled Geta in their freezer, and that's how we discovered that he was from northern Kentucky. So it was remarkable. But yeah, so there's I feel like it's worth noting that breakfast can also be regional.
That's true. Yeah, it's a mix of, it's kind of like Scrapple in a way, but it has oats in it. People get it crunchy. I discovered that there's a place that makes a Geta lettuce tomato sandwich. Instead of bacon, it's Geta. I really need
And
to
this
go have
is
that.
in Cincinnati.
It's in Northern Kentucky. It's called the Anchor Grill in Covington, Kentucky.
Oh, sure.
Shout
I've been
out.
there, yes.
Yeah, I've
I'm
been there a
familiar.
ton. I didn't know they had this.
Oh,
It was very,
yeah.
yeah. Anyway, fun fact.
I know. It's funny. I gave up eating red meat when I was 13. So, yeah. But it's funny because my mother was always like, well, that means you can eat pork because we live in Porkopolis and the pigs can fly.
Yep.
I was like, that is not quite how that works, Mom. But,
No?
because I drew the line on mammals and I was trying to explain to her that,
Yeah,
not,
I see.
not quite, but.
No,
yeah. But
I'm on your mom's side here. I mean, it's
Yeah.
the other white
I
meat.
know.
It's in the slogan. So,
It's in the slogan.
yeah. So, okay.
Anyways, technology, we're back.
Yeah, let's come back to tech. Well, are you over my hot takes, Robbie? Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
I'm going to let you pick where you want to go with this. Then.
Yeah, that sounds good to me.
Yes.
Yeah, these hot takes didn't really make sense. I didn't know if you pulled them from something, but we're going to skip them.
I did, but
So
it
one
doesn't
thing
matter.
I-
I put all
I-
this work in.
That's fine. Well, you can come back to them if you want. But
Fair.
Prepped.
So
and
one of the
everything.
things I wanted to mention from some of your posts, you had some about like framework wars and spas and things like that. Do we think that spas are dead now? Is the framework wars over? Like, what's the next chapter?
Well, I've been very interested in following it. I wouldn't say that anybody has come down on the answer yet, but what I would say, when I decided to become a front-end engineer, I got some advice that instead of learning JavaScript, I should just learn React. And in retrospect, I was like, how does that even work? But I've heard this advice before, like other places, like on podcasts and stuff. So apparently my own mentor wasn't the only one that was just like, just skip it, jump into React. That's what you need to do. And so I would say from the folks that I've spoken with, React isn't going anywhere. So if what you're worried about is a job, React's a great place to go. When I was looking for jobs, I remember talking to some folks who were looking for Angular developers. So frameworks aren't going anywhere, spas aren't going anywhere. I met some Vue folks recently who were talking up. I had questions about signals. I was like, what's the deal with signals? I got to hear the Vue perspective on signals. But anyways, so but what I've written about was that, yeah, there's obviously, if you're following what I guess the most exciting technology innovations are that are in the front end space, the debate over what to do with all the JavaScript that we're porting in is number one. And so I think that comes down to this like pendulum swing that we're seeing between DevX and UX, right? Where the user experience for the folks who are on their mobile devices that maybe aren't able to, that are a little older and having a hard time kind of loading these huge frameworks onto their iPhone or whatever, their mobile devices, that they're the ones who are suffering by our addiction to these spas. And so I think that it behooves us to start to move to a more HTML first approach, whether that's through islands or, whatever sort of ways that we're going to go about it. So I think that there's a number of ways to answer that question. And I think a lot of it will depend on like, were the frameworks a zero interest rate phenomena, right? Are we moving into this, new scenario where we need to be a little bit more conservative with the amount of JavaScript that we're sending? Or are we, going to continue to say, well, I can't train up folks on, the newest, on Quick or whatever, on the newest frameworks that aren't completely beholden to these, heavy JavaScript frameworks. So I think it's going to come down on that. But yeah, I don't have a crystal ball. I'm not going to be able to answer that question. But I am following it. I think that there's a lot of really interesting folks who have very strong opinions about it that I like to follow on Twitter and see what they think on it. So I'd say I'm more just in the crowd, just eating popcorn, just enjoying it, just seeing where the war's going. I did think I was pretty clever for coming up with Spa Wars. A lot of people were talking about it. So, I'll pat myself on my back for that one.
Nice.
But
it's like the latest incarnation of like what was the browser wars at one point to a degree.
oh, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think you're dialed in the whole sense that, like, the only right answer is it depends, first of all, anyway, right? Like, what are your people resources? What is the knowledge, skills gap, or what already exists? What are you trying to accomplish? If you're starting today, you might make different choices, but if you're not, obviously, you're beholden to the choices you were made before, and then what do you get from shifting from those choices? It's funny because what you were told is essentially things I was told forever ago, except for instead of React, it was jQuery. It was like, yeah, you can learn some of these things, but if you're just trying to animate a button or whatever, or make something pop up once you do this other thing, then jQuery will get you there. And, let's just get it done. But you do get painted into a corner around that. Yeah, like to some degree, React probably never going away. But also the next time you're looking for a job, you have to only continue down that same path unless you take some personal initiative. And also you probably just don't fully understand not you personally, but just like if that's the path you started on, this is a way to accomplish something. But if you come down and have an issue there and you start digging into it in the framework, you don't understand what's happening there potentially, because right, it's all written in JavaScript. You've got this sugar on top. What is happening over here that's causing my issue? I'm going to have limiters there too. And it's ironic that the new shiny has become the original thing anyway, right? Like actually HTML is the new shiny because it was always there. Wasn't, that's how it all started anyway.
Oh yeah, I know. And extend that to like React server components, PHP, what?
Right, exactly. You know?
And it's all like, I think there's a middle ground of like, people all say, learn React because you want to get a job, which I still would agree with in this current climate is like the best thing to learn is React for a job. However, you don't have to write everything in React. You could have a separate CSS file. You could have your HTML be like correct semantic markup and not all divs. You don't have to make everything reactive. Some things can be static and then you can sprinkle React in where you need it. And people don't do that. They just wrap everything in a component. I think they've lost sight of what it was originally intended for, which was to take a normal site that was HTML and add in some cool reactive stuff to it. But now we just render everything with it. So,
well, it works for Facebook, right? I mean, if the original intent was to like support this massive, project, then I guess, it's succeeding.
Yeah, success for sure.
Success achieved. But yeah, for a little dinky e-commerce site or something, I'm not sure that's what you're looking for. Might want to keep your options open.
Right.
Yeah. Is Facebook still cool though? Like I think people liked React because Facebook was cool. Mm-hmm. And then now like, ooh, maybe it's not anymore.
Just going to go on the record here and say that Robbie's got the hottest take of them all. Mm-hmm. React is cool because it came out when Facebook was cool.
I mean, React was cool just because it made like this really hard thing. We were trying to start to move from like client rendered applications because they didn't invent that. That was happening before with a few other, I can't even remember them all, like Knockout JS was one. We used Backbone at National Geographic. And, there was a handful of others trying to do sort of a similar thing, saying all of like the complex back-end server side logic can also kind of be front end to the client as well. And, let's keep trying to evolve that. And React came out and said, let's just make it this little sliver of things, which is kind of fun. And so that made it super cool that you could like do some of these things without like full page refreshes and also have it be like, yeah, I think I wrote like the first component in React and pushed it to production in like 3 hours. And so that was kind of fun. And I was like, oh, this is super cool. But it's the whole thing where like I'm walking around with a hammer and not everything's a hammer problem though.
Mm-hmm. A hammer problem, AKA a nail.
Yeah, exactly.
No, we call them hammer problems now.
Yeah, we like, yeah, that's our thing. Hammer problems are nails. But if you need a screwdriver,
go to Home
and you bring
Depot
in
and
a
you
hammer,
get a box of hammer problems.
hammer problem. Right. So anyway, there's that whole aspect. And now we're 10 years down the line just about, and maybe we should rethink this. Whoa.
Yeah.
Who knows?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think anyone argues that it made the developer experience fantastic. But I mean, I think that's, what's interesting. It's like, do we want the developer's experience to be awesome at the expense of the user or the environment? I think that's another, component of this when we're, we have these massive things that we're exporting. I mean, that can't be great. That's always comes up when I think about AI. Everyone's got a chatbot now. I'm like, really? Do we really need to bulldoze another rainforest so that we can have a chatbot?
Yeah, right. And all these new startups like leveraged on all these other technologies that may or may go, it's like the next blockchain, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, I'm hoping it's a little better than that, but yeah.
Yeah. It's more useful than NFTs.
Yeah. I think all of my NFTs are like below zero at this point, for sure.
Oh, you have a few NFTs. Exciting.
Recur just shut down. You talked me into that one.
Oh yeah, I did, because my friend who bought a Tesla with one of his NFT sales convinced me that was going to be a thing. So you can see where you're like, well, maybe I'll make this, and now it didn't. He still has one of those Bored Apes, which I don't think are even worth anything anymore either. But
oh my god,
well, they're still worth the most, but not like they were.
Yeah, like $100,000, and now somebody gave them $500 or something. I don't know. I did one for charity.
NFT. Yeah.
Well, now you do.
I do. I'm excited.
I'll gladly transfer it to you if I could afford the gas to get it to you. Turns out not even that anymore. Yeah. So the disclaimer is never listen to Robbie or me for any investment advice.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I know you're supposed to, the Andreessen Horowitz podcast, you're supposed to start by saying that, right?
Right. Yes.
Yeah.
Or like,
well, we didn't start with any investment advice, but yeah. Now that we've talked about some, we still have a ton of Shiba Inu. I have like 600 million coins or something, and
oh yeah,
the offshoot of Doge.
Yeah,
somehow that was going to work out. I mean, to a degree, I can understand the potential and utility around it. Arbitrary JPEGs aside, there's something there, but I think that needs to get refined quite a bit over time, and then assigning value to marks in the chain is probably not super great. So validation tool rather than an assignment of value or investment vehicle in some way. But then again, stocks kind of are made up too, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think Web3, definitely money right out. So a lot of the other research I've been doing has been on certifications. And it was interesting to me that I learned that some of these accrediting bodies for certification programs, they actually use the blockchain in order to ensure that when you put your little badge onto your LinkedIn account, saying that, you were certified in whatever for the next 3 years, that the blockchain is actually what's going to ensure that you didn't steal this badge. You get your special number and everybody's, on the same page, that you didn't just pirate this image and upload it or whatever. So I think there's probably a lot of great utility that's going on behind the scenes. That's kind of like in the third paragraph of the description where you're like, oh, okay, well, blockchain, I guess, is doing other things. So hopefully that's where the discussion will go in the future. Like, oh, okay, it can work pretty well, I guess. But yeah, I think we're still in the crypto bros era, and I don't know when that's gonna.
Well, the gold rush is kind of over, so I think like now you're starting to see the more utility come out, and that's going to be like nickels and dimes and building its way up. It's not going to be hugely monetarily beneficial overnight. So like. It's going to take a while to get the same excitement back of people being like, oh, yeah, this is cool again. But I think it'll get there. It does have a lot of uses that are really great.
Yeah, I think the one that you cited is like excellent. That's a thing. Yeah. And I know you wrote some articles around certifications, which I have said in some ways I think would be really beneficial to our industry. Because there's so we've talked a bunch here about hiring and issues around that, and a strange marketplace for demand, the crazy arbitrary hiring practices, right? Like a surgeon doesn't go in and do a practice heart surgery, right? Because, well, the implications could be pretty bad if they don't do so well. But then like conversely, right, they have certifications and all of this behind them that proves, and then a reputation and some recommendations. Like, why couldn't something like that work in our industry as well? It's skilled professionals, right? Maybe something where like there's a whole internship and mastery levels, and you get blockchain certified levels of accomplishment, and then that's all you have to be. I have to be me. I show that I did these things. These are what you're asking for. Great. Let's agree that we can do this work together. I think that would be straightforward, trustworthy, and efficient, rather than what we do now, which is Bill on the team came up with this code challenge that he feels is a strong indicator of someone he'd like to work with, but like that kind of thing. Or here's entire businesses built on like leak code problems, and go practice those, and they're going to pick 5 of the 35 that you worked on. Hopefully you did good at them, and then you go and you have to just make a button bigger, or sort through an array or something like that. Pretty much 90% of the time you use none of what you do in these times. And so why can't we get better with that? I mean, like certifications, that's something we could ever approach as an industry?
Well, I could talk about certifications all day. I don't know if you want me to really go down that rabbit hole. But what I will say is I think technology certifications and developer certifications in particular are so fascinating to me, not only because I came out of higher education where it's like, there are accrediting bodies, right? People come out and make sure that your university is actually doing what it says it's going to do. That if you get a degree in CS, that it actually means that you studied this, curriculum that everybody agrees is going to, that it shows that you can, walk into a job that is, a junior developer position and do the job, right? That you actually are qualified. But as many of us know, folks with CS degrees, information science degrees, they actually have to then upskill themselves after they get that degree in the languages that are actually being used in the industry. I know, for example, I was talking to a director of engineering who had to teach himself Ruby on Rails the minute that he got out of his program in the 2010s because there were no jobs for the sort of languages that he was learning. And also he didn't want to work at those jobs. He wanted to kind of work at places that were, Rails shops. So I think that that's kind of an interesting part of the conundrum that the bodies that we would look to make sure that these positions are actually being, shifted so that you have to train up yourself or you can trust a vendor or a vendor neutral organization to certify you. And if you do, hiring managers typically don't care. They're not interested in certifications. If you go on Hacker News, the most well-regarded one tends to be like the AWS certifications. Even then, do you really want to pay out of pocket for a certification? Usually you want your employer to pay for it. So that's usually the path to certification. And so I do find it a little problematic when folks are using certifications as like a jumping off point to getting into the career, especially folks who like did a boot camp or something and they can't find a job and they're like, oh, okay, well, I'm going to get certified in whatever products certification thing and I'm going to pay $150 to do it. And then there's all these study guides that actually cost extra, and it's not cheap to become certified. So I do think it's problematic, but then at the end of the day, these vendor certifications are not accredited, right? It's like the fox guard in the hen house, There's a lot of motives for companies to have these certification programs as well that aren't necessarily for the good of the person taking that exam, right? It's not necessarily that they're like, okay, we're going to benefit humanity by making sure that everybody can get a job, that everybody knows these skills. It's usually like, we want to make sure that you understand our technology so that when you get this job or at your particular place where you're employed already, that they're going to, use this particular managed service or whatever.
Yeah.
So
I can see where there's a massive gap there in all kinds of things. Like the institutions who are training like through a traditional university or whatnot, their programs are dated possibly, and I'm sure there's a lot of bureaucracy to sort of integrate new curriculum. So then conversely, you have something like the Amazon, which has, they're selling certifications essentially to get folks kind of locked into their ecosystem, right? So they're incentivized in other ways anyway. And so if you're not on AWS, why would you trust their certification to work within another infrastructure? And then also lots of that is infrastructure anyway. You can become an AWS certified developer, but again, everything is kind of skewed towards their system.
Yeah.
I don't know, like,
and none of it guarantees you a job.
But none of it guarantees. Well, and a boot camp certainly doesn't. And it's no like slight against those that decide to take that accelerated path. I think it can work. I think it's a challenging thing to take into play. I just think that you have to have a certain passion and dedication and just a particular aptitude to work well in that environment. I think it's just neat. It can be very niche, right? Like there's a whole bunch of different ways you can learn this industry, and that one can work, but it doesn't mean it will. And they're incentivized to be like, we'll get you hired. Some of them are like, we'll get you hired or you don't pay us. So of course they're going to teach you just React, just for these hiring managers they know, or whatever sales relationship they have. Right. And then that's the career they're going to get you. So it doesn't kind of give you anything out in the marketplace. I'm sure lots of people are finding that to be the case now. I mean, without suggesting a union, but, skilled workers in other manual labor areas or an architect or things like that. Right. There are organizations that exist that give you certifications for that. But are we just beyond where that model can work because the speed at which technology changes? I don't know. But something like that is appealing to me. Like, I'll start the carpenters union for developers.
Yeah. No, I love a good union. Yeah. Well, I think that would be a very good way to go about it. I mean, there's a lot of foundations that have certification programs which tend to be very exacting. They're very difficult to pass. So I'm thinking of like the certified Kubernetes administrator that the CNCF administers. I mean, so, there's a lot of ways to kind of get around the vendor portion of this. However, they're not cheap, and hiring managers look askance at all certifications. In my experience, they're not interested in them. I mean, there's some more established developers who don't even list certifications on their resume. Like, they're almost embarrassed by them.
Yeah, we're not helping ourselves. I think that's part of the problem too, then, right? Like, maybe it'll come to some sort of influx at some point with kind of the reset in the hiring and jobs and salary markets, right?
Yeah.
Like, maybe that will like, oh yeah, I don't care because it's working out. And for the last 5-10 years, I can kind of call my own shots and bounce around and get more money and more titles and, drive the ship. And I really feel like there's been a massive shift in that with all of these layoffs and just an incredible available workforce.
Yeah,
So
the pandemic completely rewrote how we do education. Absolutely.
Yeah,
I mean,
right.
Everything's remote now. A lot of the folks that I've spoken with who run these certification programs explained to me that they were kind of moving slowly towards remote testing, but when the pandemic hit, they all fast-tracked that initiative. And so now there's very few certifications that don't offer a remote test, either through, partnering with like Pearson VUE, who can proctor that exam, or just by, creating so much more material. And so like a big trend that we're seeing now is this move towards subscription model learning. So, this is like SaaS trading, right? So instead of just paying for like, one course, one exam, a lot of companies are moving towards like wanting employers to actually pay for the subscription model so that you can continuously access learning materials, because learning is just supposed to happen all of the time. And so if we look at like the history of certifications and training in general, it's really problematic because a lot of training used to be paid for through like apprentice models and the unions actually, but now it's supposed to be sort of employer led. So then we hear about like employers offering like $1,000 a year for their developers to like go to conferences, to, keep up on new innovations, or to, pay for training, pay for these certification exams. But what I'm hearing more is that developers are expected to train and upskill themselves on their own time. So if you can't be contributing to open source projects on the weekends because you've got kids, sorry, we got a backlog, right? There's no time for you to be learning new languages, making sure that when React finally dies, that the newest framework. But it's really interesting because I think it kind of, that's what Silicon Valley has been moving us towards all along, right? Is this idea that, you got to pull your stuff up from your bootstraps. We got chaos monkeys, right? We got to just code this out quickly and put less investment into QA and just hope for the best, right? Now the pendulum is swinging back a little bit. We're moving more towards making sure that we have documentation, and that the DevOps movement has kind of made sure that things don't move quite as fast as the sort of stereotype that we see on Silicon Valley. But there is still this idea, I think, that a lot of the sort of more controversial lights in Silicon Valley have promoted that education is no good, that schooling is not going to get you the skills that you need, and that you should be self-trained, which I think is really problematic because learning is all about community, right? One must learn in a community setting. That's why I got an internship. I wanted mentors.
Yeah, and that's the way you seek to learn. And I think there's a lot of different ways to learn, and having more options is better than less. And so whatever model that Silicon Valley had been forcing into or encouraging or whatever throughout that, I think it's one of the possible ways. But I wonder if that'll start to be less of an influence with less VC money being tossed around.
I don't know. The Peter Thiel fund, for getting kids to not go to college. I mean, that's such a sort of noteworthy instance of denigrating the value of accredited education.
Yeah. Even if you aren't learning something you're using at college, you're learning to learn and learning how to iterate on processes and different things. So it's like, it's still valuable whether what you learn is applicable to your job or not.
Yeah.
So, I think that people saying that there's no value are definitely wrong. We need to get some more like HTML, CSS, JavaScript stuff into college curriculum. Like, I have a CS degree, and I had one class that did like a little bit of web stuff, and that was it. And it was like, yeah, you can figure it out later. And it's like, well, yes, it is like technically, from a engineering perspective easier or whatever, because it's like not as algorithm heavy or whatever, like, but it's a totally different skill set. So you still need to teach it, or we will have to learn it on our own. So
Right. Yeah. And they think, well, our time's not well spent here. You can figure this out. Go read additional documentation on your own time. I mean, I have a spicy take, because I think that I don't think that college is useless, but I think that the idea of go to college and be successful and make good money is fading away. I think that like that whole just go get a degree, it doesn't matter, go spend some time there, prove you can finish something, and the world is your oyster is not necessarily a thing anymore. And I hope there's a course correction around that, because otherwise I feel like at some point in the far future, when my children are at that age that they're looking at college, it's going to be like, well, what do you want to do with your life? You need to have some idea about that, because this may not be the best course of action, or at least at this point. If you're like, I don't know, I'd almost rather you like go get a job and think about it a little bit and see how life kind of sucks and maybe pushes you into your interest, or go do an internship on something or whatever. Like, it just doesn't feel like it's the automatic choice that it was.
No, I agree with you entirely. When I was teaching for a decade, I talked to a lot of freshmen, because a lot of times I taught the sort of beginning communication courses, like the English 101 courses. And I tended to teach at engineering schools. So I taught at Carnegie Mellon and I taught at Georgia Tech. And so I've seen this sort of disillusionment with having to learn, how to write well, being forced to take a literature course, being forced to have some sort of social sciences. And so I've seen that sort of frustration. But then when I later learned that, folks are graduating with their CS degrees and not having the skills that they need, or that, front end is not even taught. Like, I believe that was the case at Georgia Tech when I was there. I believe I remember speaking to some students about like, so, where do you learn JavaScript? And I'm remembering that wasn't even really taught in like a specific way, like there were clubs and things. But definitely, I would have to check on that. But I know for a fact it wasn't a focus. There does seem to be a disconnect between the skills that are taught and the ones that are, reflective of the marketplace, but also, that are just, I guess, kind of resonate with what the students are interested in terms of, I have often argued that the front end is where all the innovation's happening. So if universities still think that they're the place where, people can be their most creative and explore things, like, well, then we should be doing more with front end. I mean, this seems ridiculous. I mean, this is I don't know. But I often get into that fight, which I hope I'm in good company with
for sure,
defending the front end.
Because, a lot of folks are visual, and we have short attention spans now and things of that nature, and web applications and working within a front end where you can do something and see it right away and see like the fruits of what you've worked on. That's encouraging, I think, for a lot of people. So like giving them that right away and giving them some wins, like with some, basic HTML, CSS, here's a form. Oh, and now you want to do some cool things. Now you want to process that information in cool ways. Oh, now let's go down the CS path. But like starting with logic and algorithms and very like terse, difficult things, it's sort of like you basically gave someone physics for their first science class or something, so it just feels like people having gratification, which is what we're seeing in the world. Like, people are getting so used to gratification, giving them some of that, encourage that, like, let's get a spark going here.
I know my favorite exercise for speaking to folks who consider themselves non-technical. So in the past, that has included a lot of marketing folks who consider developers all to be wizards. They don't really understand. Is that all you got to do is like open up the inspector and like change some of the text on a web page, and they are like, "What did you just do?" Or like change a color, and they're like, "Oh my god!" I don't know if you're not starting there. I got no advice. But yeah, I agree with you. I think that's probably a more natural way. But maybe there's like a sort of generational difference there. I mean, I guess, folks are coming to technology in different ways. And yeah, I mean, I have small children too, and I'm terrified about like how they're going to learn about technology through smartphones. I mean, I feel like we should all be, first you got to build the PC and then we're going to, no, not going to happen. They're playing with the iPad. It's all, I lost them already. It's over.
We're
done.
down that path. Like, my son got, he just turned 7 a week ago. Yep. I'm a terrible parent. He got his own Switch, his own Nintendo Switch. I was very concerned there about video games, and I grew up in a generation of video games, though, and I feel like there was a lot of pluses around that. And what else are you going to do on a rainy day? They watch TV, they play games. I don't know. Yes, we wanted them to read.
But when you opened SimCity 2000, you had to do it through DOS. So that's the difference.
Yeah.
You could have gotten him a Super Nintendo.
Yeah, I should have. Well, okay. So we have this thing. It's an open source. It's called the Recall Box. And you can put a bunch of retro game ROMs on it, and you can play a bunch of systems. So he can play the 2600, he can play the regular NES, he can play Super Nintendo. We've actually gone down some of that path to introduce him to Mario in that way first, and then sort of get him. 7 is 27 in my years, so he can do all the things.
For sure. My kids aren't that old, so I'm not quite there yet. But yeah, it's coming up. Yeah.
Yeah. I've got 4 and 7, and so 4 she doesn't get the Switch yet. She does have an iPad. She has some learning apps on there. We can control a lot more of the iPad, which I kind of like that too. But
yeah. Okay. I've got a 4 and a 22 month. So yeah, it's. I don't know. We're working our way there. But today, my 4-year-old just spent a lot of time digging in the dirt. I feel like that's probably
nice.
Better.
That's great.
Better than.
I love that too.
It's 94 degrees here in Atlanta too. I'm we're just melting out there.
I mean,
it is a cloud of mosquitoes.
It's called Hot Atlanta for a reason.
I know. So I met you both at Render ATL. Do you attend every year? That was my first one.
No, that's our first.
That was our first one too.
Yeah.
Oh wow. What was your major takeaway? The coolest thing you've ever seen?
It was fun. I enjoyed it. I liked kind of our setup. The initial setup. So they hadn't really done what we were doing before. We hadn't really done it. We didn't have a full understanding. We knew it was just going to be huge. So it's a very much like this cultural conference with a sprinkle of tech and folks in tech and encouraged to sort of choose your own adventure. So I thought that was interesting. Randomly setting up shop in a media room and trying to record podcasts and or end up getting 10% of the conference drunk on free booze that we brought in without permission. That was also kind of fun. So
nobody complained.
Yeah, it turns out not even, I probably shouldn't rat out anyone involved with the conference, but folks involved knew what was going on and it was okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
My biggest complaint was that they put Kelly Vaughn, Sarah Drasner, and I forget who the third one was, 3 people that you would want to go listen to all at the same time slot.
Right.
And I was okay, I don't like that. I feel like the logistics needed a little work, but I think overall, it's a huge conference and it's hard to manage. And I think it's a very cool conference, and I'm excited to see how it evolves over time. And we'll probably go back. But
yeah, I would definitely go back, no doubt about that. And yeah, logistically with all those tracks, and also I guess one of the things was you're usually used to kind of a big name closer, but then that closer comes on at 5. In the instance of Chris Coyer, I want to see Chris's talk. Go and see, and I don't think it was as well attended as they would have liked, because they kicked off after events, and then folks wanted to get into those events too, so they're kind of limited. So a lot of people just went to go and stand in line early and try and do some of the closing out events, and so there was some overlap and conflict with that. Again, I'm just kind of used to I go to a conference, I want to see some talks, and then I'm going to do the events, and some of that overlap, but. Yeah. I mean, again, it's huge. It was definitely cool. A lot of cool things happening all at once, though.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Atlanta's a good beer town, though. I know we're on a whiskey podcast. I should keep my beer opinions to myself, but I don't know if you got to try any of the local beers here, but it's a good place to come visit for drinking in general.
Here's the thing, Kate. As I'm getting older. And my stomach just doesn't love beer anymore. I don't know what it is specifically, and so I just kind of shy off of the beer. Not because I dislike beer, it just dislikes me.
It doesn't like you.
Yeah,
sure.
So I had some good food there for sure. I'm always a food person. So, what
did you have? Barbecue? Did you stay on brand?
So we did have Gus's fried chicken one time. Okay. I believe some barbecue. We went to some hidden bar that was you would go through a phone booth, and they had some cool
red phone booth.
Yeah, red phone booth. That place was cool. Yeah, there's a speakeasy thing. It's you have to know the code or show up early enough to where someone feels sorry for you and let you in. And then they have an excellent whiskey selection, some good bars, nicer bar snacks and food too. So that was good. I think we had arancini there, didn't we, or something like that? I don't know. I know we had pizza and maybe something of that ilk.
Yes, we did have both of those things.
And then I went to, actually, speaking of Kelly Vaughn, I went with her and her husband and a couple other folks to a place. It was like a historic house that was changed over, and they had like a trout thing, and they make their own mac and cheese, and there's like all these fancy mac and cheeses. And no, okay, I don't remember what it was called. I can tell you later offline.
Yeah.
But yeah,
I'm not familiar with that either.
I do some of the stereotypes, but you know, I've had a lot of Southern food in my life too, though. So,
Right.
you know, I'm just trying to collect both of those things. We should let the other listener though, because I think we haven't talked about this online. We are both from Cincinnati area.
Absolutely.
And I need the public to know this, like Gold Star or Skyline chili.
Well, I'm Skyline. My family's always been Skyline. But as I mentioned, I don't eat red meat, so I don't actually eat the chili.
Yeah.
I have no dog in that fight. I do not care. What I do love at Skyline, though, is the mound of cheese that they put on my beans and rice. And I get it every time. So I get like a mound of cheese, a mound of raw onions. You know, we all smell great. And, you know, and that to me is a very good dinner. So
Yeah. I feel like one of them did a vegan version. Maybe it's recent.
possible. I don't know.
Yeah.
I've
I mean,
not seen that.
I didn't go down that path, but like, I remember like Skyline started releasing burritos and some other stuff. Gold Star does fries and stuff now too.
Okay.
They actually do a burger and then they put chili on top. And then I feel like one of the two has a vegan version. So
Yeah, possible. I don't know. I like the beans and rice. So where are you? Are you Gold Star?
I'm Gold Star, yes. So
Interesting.
funny thing. Yeah. Well, it's a funny thing. So growing up, or when I was really young, my mom worked at Gold Star. So I had lots of Gold Star and just kind of, that was my thing. But my aunt
All right. Yeah,
worked
keep it in the
at,
family.
and you know, what, good for her, I guess, whatever. She just celebrated her 50 years at Skyline. And
Wow.
they in Covington, it was like this old location. They're keeping open, all this stuff. And the city of Covington made her 50th work anniversary Wilma Day, because her name is Wilma. Because of course it is.
Wow. Local celebrities. That's exciting.
Yeah, I am related to Wilma Day.
To Wilma of Skyline fame. Yeah. That's exciting.
Yeah.
It's worth noting that every Skyline has a steamed up window, especially the older ones. So I got to know, like, is this a real steamed up Skyline? And the hot dogs be boiled?
It has to be. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Because hot dogs are already cooked. What's wrong with boiled hot dogs? I have this debate with my wife all the time because I heat up the kids' hot dogs by boiling them. She's like, that's disgusting.
What's
and
wrong
I'm
with
like,
that?
They don't want burn marks from a pan. And this is how you do it. How do you think you get hot dog flavored water? I mean, not from frying pans. So yes, hers probably does. I mean, it's been remodeled a couple of times, but it's been there as far as I can remember my whole life. If she's been there 50 years and it's this same like Covington riverfront, it's next to a place that used to be called, or maybe it still is, called Riverfront Pizza. And it's been there like forever. And you go to the bars in Covington and Main Strauss area. And then, you know, you can go to that or the Gold Star if you like flavor.
I like the mound of cheese. Does Gold Star do the mound of cheese?
Yeah,
too?
absolutely. Everybody does. Even Dixie, all of them.
Oh, yeah. I know. That's worth noting, too. Yeah. You know what's interesting? When I was painting murals, I did one behind the Mount Washington chili. So that was...
The OG, yeah.
Actually, wait. I think I'm saying that wrong.
Camp Washington.
Camp Washington. Thank you. I know. I was like, that doesn't sound right at all. Yeah, because the mural was called Campy Washington. Yeah. Oh, God. I haven't lived there in so long. It's embarrassing. I know. I still talk about Cincinnati like I know all about it. But I go there and it's like Over the Rhine's been completely redone. I'm like, where am I?
Yeah, you don't get stabbed or buy drugs there anymore. It's weird.
I know. I'm like totally lost. Like, there's all these cool places now and everything's super expensive and there's no parking down there. I'm like, well, I should just go back to Atlanta where things make sense again.
It's fair.
All right. Well, we are at time here. Is there anything you want to plug before we end?
No, I guess, if you're interested in what trends we're following at RedMonk, we've got a blog. We got to do a bunch of videos. And then, if you want to follow me on social media, feel free. I'm not, I don't pretend to be an influencer, but, Kate Holterhoff is on my handle on Mastodon, Blue Sky, X, and LinkedIn.
All right, cool. Thanks everyone for listening. If you liked it, please subscribe, leave us some ratings and reviews. We appreciate it, and we will catch you next time.
Boom, 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 boom.